That's what I had. You all right?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yes. I'm back, Biffy. Let me know when John's on the line.
Especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Erin Karenbauer. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from all of us at Karenbauer Distributing. We are teaming up with Budweiser to spread holiday cheer with an important reminder to keep our roads safe this holiday season. Always plan ahead for a safe ride home. Please don't drink and drive. Here's to a great year behind us and cheers to a new year from your friends at Karenbauer Distributing.
Highland Sports Complex is the coolest destination for sports and entertainment the Ohio Valley has ever seen. Pop in for some open basketball in our field house or reserve some turf time for your next practice or game on our synthetic fields. Online registration is open for development classes and leagues for youth and adults. Highland Sports is also the hottest destination for birthday parties and other events. So come challenge yourself on our play climb and enjoy your favorite virtual reality game in the arcade. No memberships required, so visit highlandsports.com to find your next entertainment experience and get ready to reach new heights.
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the watchdog trusts.
CA House Music has all the gear to make your music legendary. With all the best gear, including Fender, Epiphone, Yamaha, and more, CA House will have you rocking in no time. Get the most for your money with everyday low prices. And we meet or beat internet pricing. Play before you buy and let our product specialists help you pick out the instrument that's right for you. CA House Music, supporting local musicians since 1872. Play music for life.
From the Watchdog, here's your local weather forecast for your Thursday. Snow showers early, then mostly cloudy the rest of the day, high of 36. Tonight, partly cloudy, low of 27. And for your New Year's Day, freezing rain early in the morning, then transitioning to all rain for the rest of the day, and a high of 46. And that's your local weather forecast from the Watchdog.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
You're early.
Roger that.
It's Thursday.
Why even call it Thursday? Problem? We have pizza on Thursday.
Places, please. Quiet down.
Here is a complete disc jockey show with all the modern pace of today's exciting radio.
Good morning. Let's get started.
Seriously, let's go.
It's showtime.
Conversations you care about with people you know. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe, brought to you in part by Wheeling Hospital.
Well, what are we talking about today? Should bars be promoting New Year's Eve bashes in the midst of a worsening pandemic? A lot of them are. There will be packed bars in town and around the valley tonight. I'm not sure it's the smartest move, but got to make money where you make money, I guess, even at the risk of people's health. I'm a little concerned about that. Governor Justice orders a full return to in-school instruction for elementary and middle schools, plus a rollback on the start of winter sports, pushing it back till mid-March, and a new schedule for vaccinations that the governor had to clarify after he issued that. There's been a variety of pushback on each of those issues, and we'll talk about that in a bit. You had a chance earlier this morning to meet the newest member of the Watchdog team. Big Rick DeRubis was with us today, and he's going to be with us beginning on Monday every afternoon from 2 to 5 o'clock as he takes over the afternoon drive starting Monday. So Big Rick DeRubis, you learned a bit about him, his background, the things he's done, the things he cares about here on the show. Now you can listen to him every day beginning on Monday here on the Watchdog. And in only a moment, our year in review will wrap up with a visit from newspaper editor John McCabe as we kick around the top local stories of 2020. And sometimes it's always fun to do this segment because you forget the things that happened, especially this year when COVID seems to dominate so much. A couple of tidbits off the text line. Well, first of all, we got some snow outside. The day started out with a bit of snow showers. That's going to turn to a wintry mix during the day today, and by afternoon drive could see some slick spots on the roadways. Daytime high should be up to around 37 degrees. And then tomorrow, freezing rain in the early morning hours turns into rain, and probably a good soaking rain all throughout the day tomorrow. High today of 37. It is currently 31 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 31 here at my home studios, 31 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. I've got a text here saying 33 in Dillonvale. Looking forward to getting back to Dillonvale in a couple of weeks. The Dillonvale church that I preach at had to shut down for a few weeks just out of precaution and concern, and they'll be opening back up again in January. So looking forward to getting back and preaching up there at the Dillonvale Presbyterian Church. But thanks to the texter, 33 degrees in Dillonvale. So you can take a look at that. And I was talking about one of the announcers for tomorrow night's Ohio State-Clemson game is going to be broadcasting the game from home rather than being in the stadium. Texter says, Howard, almost every Major League Baseball game this past year, the broadcast was done from a remote location. It's nothing new for play-by-play. Is that true, Biffy? The baseball play-by-play was done not in the stadium?
I think some teams chose to have guys in the stadium and other teams didn't. I think Baltimore, I think they actually did. They had their guys at Camden Yards that would call the game from the press box. But yeah, I think it depended on in just the team and what they decided or what they let their crew do to call the game.
You know that old phrase, the more things change, the more they stay the same. In the early days of broadcasting, radio broadcasting, games were called from a remote location. And I mean, I think everybody knows this. Back in the early days, someone would be at the stadium and would literally send a teletype message back to the studio, swing and a miss, strike four, kind of thing. And then the person at the studio would just pull it off the teletype and read, swing and a miss, strike four, Leonard. I mean, that's the way they did it. So I get it's like everything else, Biffy. We sometimes just go back to the way it used to be done, calling it from afar. I don't know. It just seems strange to me that it seems like it's the fun, the value of a live game broadcast is having the broadcasters there and able to look at the field, Now, I know we have all these camera angles and stuff that people can look at, and I guess in some ways that's better, but I don't know. I still trust Jerry Ames taking a look at the field as opposed to Jerry Ames looking at a TV screen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right.
And
Is John with us yet?
No,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say he's not here yet. Still waiting on him. But to go back to one thing real quick about the governor and his announcement, and this one here is very unfortunate because, and with the governor saying West Virginia cannot start until March 1st.
Winter sports will not start till March 1st. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the main things in the middle of basketball season that we usually have is wrestling, and normally in January is the OVAC Ron Mock Wrestling Tournament.
Right.
And for this year, it has been canceled because with the governor starting West Virginia's season on March 1st, Ohio will already be into its wrestling postseason by then. So
there won't be a wrestling championship.
No, we will not have the OVAC Ron Mock Wrestling Championships this year because of the governor's announcement yesterday.
Wow. You know, I really do try not to be always critical of the governor, and I think he's done a lot of good things in his pandemic response, and I support him in some of those things. But I still wonder sometimes if he thinks everything through. You know what I'm saying, Biff? If he really understands all of the implications. For example, did he understand by pushing the start date of winter sports back that the wrestling championships would have to be canceled? Did they look? I'm sure they did. Did they look at, with winter sports not starting till mid-March, what's that going to do to spring sports? And what kind of scheduling issues could arise with spring sports?
Well, and the problem is if you're a student athlete that plays multiple sports, you know, you play a winter and a spring or a fall and a spring, but especially the ones that play winter sports, you're almost forcing these young kids now to basically make a pick. So you say, okay, am I going to play basketball instead of baseball or if softball? You're going to pick between that. You're going to run track and field. You're going to do lacrosse. I mean, what other spring sports there are? You're basically forcing these kids now to choose, okay, do you want to play your winter sport or your spring sport?
Right.
That's it.
And look, and maybe that's what needs to be done. What concerns me is I'm just not sure that the governor has thought it through all the way, that he's measured these things together. You know what I'm saying? And yesterday, yesterday the governor said elementary and junior high school students will go back, all students, 5 days a week, in the classroom, beginning January 19th. Next week through the 19th, it'll still be remote learning. The 19th, everybody back in the classroom. I don't want to get into whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea, but that's okay. I'm not going to argue that. That's not the point. At the same time, he pushes the sports back even further into March, and I don't understand if you're rushing forward with putting kids in the classroom, why are you pushing back the kids for playing sports? And then the third sort of major announcement he had yesterday, the governor had in his press conference, was he was going to create a vaccine schedule. Of course, nursing homes and other healthcare facilities getting their vaccines already. And then he says that those 80 years of old or older, 80 years of age or older would be vaccinated. Teachers 50 years of age or older will be vaccinated. Now, first of all, I say, wait a minute, 80 years and older, teachers 50 years and older. What about 67-year-old men that got health issues? Like, me. And so the governor laid out this big deal, and we're going to have the National Guard is going to coordinate this, and you'll be able to come to National Guard armories and get your vaccine and so on and so forth. But then yesterday afternoon, the governor, I won't say backtrack, but he had to, using the governor's own words, provide clarification on the vaccination plan. even though he announced these vaccines for individuals 80 and older, he had to go back and say, but patience is urged because we don't really have enough vaccines for everybody based on what's been received from the federal government, we're likely to receive from the federal government. So even though he made these announcements, the reality is that the vaccinations are not going to be ready for people in the near future. I mean, I think a lot of people are expecting it to show up on Monday. You know what I'm saying, Biff? Oh, good, I can go get my vaccine. Not so.
Yep.
In fact, the governor in his follow-up release said West Virginians are urged not to show up at local health departments or National Guard armories for vaccines unless you have been told to go by someone because there's a vaccination clinic scheduled. Do not overwhelm pharmacies, clinics, hospitals, or the COVID-19 hotline by calling repeatedly. So he made this big announcement, and then he had to backtrack and go, except we're really not ready to do it yet anyway. Again, I'm not going to jump up and down on it with both feet, but I'm just not sure that he thinks everything through. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too critical, but I don't think he thinks everything through. It's 9:20 here on the Watchdog Morning Show. Did I hear you say John's ready?
Yes, he is.
Mr. McCabe is here with us on this New Year's Eve. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Howard. How are you?
I am well. How are you today? You feeling all right?
Hey, I'm doing great. Sure. Feel perfect.
Good, good. You have any big New Year's Eve plans? I think you're probably going to just hang out at home, too.
Yeah, I'll be lucky if I make it to midnight. That's my big New Year's Eve plan. I don't think I've seen midnight in several months now, so I'll be surprised if I may just have to tape the prop-filled and cast-filled Times Square ball drop and watch it tomorrow morning at about 6 a.m. So that may be the only way I see it.
I like to watch the ball drop. I don't know why, it's silly, but I like to watch it drop. But that usually means somewhere around 10 o'clock I drift off to sleep.
Yeah.
And at like 5 minutes till midnight, somebody, usually my wife or our friends come over and say, wake up, it's time for the, okay.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it dropped. Okay, now I'm going back to sleep. That's my way.
Maybe I'd try to get a nap this afternoon, but the Mountaineers are on at 4, so I'd like to watch at least some of that. Now I may end up sleeping through a good bit of that game. Take a little nap around 4:30, 5 o'clock. But no, my goal is to stay up. The reality is probably by 10:30, I'll be in dreamland. So,
John, before I get to the year in review, just real quick, the governor's various announcements yesterday. Do you think he's on the right track?
On the right track, yeah. I don't understand pushing back, as you were just talking. I don't understand pushing back winter sports by almost 2 months. That doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. The schools still, to me, don't make a lot of sense. But at least it's going to get kids back in the classroom. The younger kids back in the classroom starting on the 19th. That is, I don't know if you saw last night, Howard, the AFT West Virginia is already.
Yeah, they're really pushing back hard on that.
Beating the drums of it's not safe, let's not go back in the classroom. So again, this all comes down to our kids being put second. We know locally in what is in Ohio County, a very good school system, and the remote learning doesn't work. Kids are disengaged. Kids are failing classes, and that's happening across the state. But again, here's a system where we've had good success over decades, and the remote learning, which has now been the last 2 months of the school year, were done remotely. So we need kids to be back in the classroom, and and if the 19th is the date, fine. I'll agree with you. I don't understand the sports. I don't understand how that's going to work. Even Tom Wolf, who's been about as draconian as you can be in his measures in Pennsylvania, has winter sports.
Right.
Starting in Pennsylvania very soon. So, my hope is that the governor will see the error of his ways and at least look at, we know by the end of January, most all teachers are at least going to have their first round of the vaccine. Start, if you have to wait for winter sports, start them at the beginning of February. Don't wait until March, because there's no way you can fit 2 full seasons into that compressed time frame.
Right. My concern is because depending on whether you believe that we're being overly cautious or being not cautious enough, the two don't seem to go side by side. I'm not sure I like the idea of insisting that every student be back by January 19th. I am a much more cautious. Some listeners call me a fear monger. I'm not totally sure that's the right move, but if it is acceptable for all students to get back in the classroom on January 19th, then why do you push the sports back even further? I mean, those two don't seem to mesh with each other. Either it is or it isn't okay for kids to get back to normal activity, and I don't understand why we push the sports back, but speed up the classroom. Regardless of how you feel about what's right or wrong, the two of them don't seem to go together.
And as we see right across the river from us, we have, the smaller districts, obviously, but districts that are in geographically similar areas. Like, we don't have any Columbus City School type districts in West Virginia, for example, or, these really big giant districts. But when you look at Ohio has been successful with sports. They've been successful with continuing in-person classes. And you know what happens whenever you have an outbreak on a team or concern of an outbreak at a school? What do? They just postpone the game. It's that simple. We just had a story the other day of kids on a bus up in, I believe, in Wintersville getting ready to come to one of the riverfront schools here and getting a call and, having to disembark the bus and go back home because the game had to be put off. So, again, I understand being cautious, but if you could start sports, you could probably start sports on the schedule you're on now with January 11th and have those contests begin. And again, if there's an issue, you just postpone a game. You don't need to push everything back until March.
Yeah, it just seems to me it should be one way or the other. Either it is acceptable to speed up the return to normalcy in our schools, or it's not. But why sports it's not, but classroom it is, just makes no sense. And then, of course, the governor, and I'm not trying to jump on him, but he had to go, he made this big announcement about 80-year-olds getting vaccinated, and we're going to have National Guard armories, this, that. Then he had to backtrack later in the day and go, well, no, wait a minute. We're really not ready for that yet.
Well, you do know, there were people lined up outside of the Kanawha County Health Department yesterday, 80-year-old people waiting to get a vaccine. And in fact, I believe many of them did. I was reading some things last night where, people, older people heard that. In fact, I know some people here locally who were able to get appointments at some of the local, area pharmacies to get vaccinated today. So I think you're going to see some people get vaccinated, and then probably have to calm down because the reality is there's not enough doses to vaccinate the entire 65 and older population right now in West Virginia. But I'll give him, again, we had pushed him for 2 consecutive press briefings on if they were looking at prioritizing seniors, 80, not 80, but basically 65 and over. Again, you look at the numbers, 70% of the deaths in West Virginia come from that group of 65 and older. They make up 20% of our population. So, while the state's sitting here authorizing vaccine use for people who have no interaction with others, really, or no interaction with school students, and are under age 50 in a group that has had, less than a handful of deaths, we have people that we know are at super high risk that we're waiting on. So I'll give the governor credit for realizing that, reprioritizing the schedule, and moving the most vulnerable population higher, up toward the top of the list.
But it's another example, though, I think, of the governor not, maybe I shouldn't, I start saying not thinking it through, maybe that's not right, not expressing himself clearly enough in his press conference. He made it sound as if, we're ready, go to your National Guard armory and get your vaccines. And then he had to backtrack later in the day and say, well, no, actually don't go anywhere because we don't have the vaccines for you.
Yeah. Well, he specifically said, because I listened to it 2 or 3 times, starting today, seniors 80 and older will be eligible to get their vaccine. He said those were his words, starting today, meaning yesterday. So, now I'm sure what he meant was starting today, we are reprioritizing this list, talk with your doctor, call the health department. They can start to get these things scheduled as more vaccine rolls in. But, we still, they've still got a second dose for people that will be coming up here. Those first frontline workers who got it several weeks ago, they're due for their second vaccination on January 6th. So really about less than a week from today. So, the state's got to make sure enough vaccine is ready for that second dose for all those people who were vaccinated the day the day that it came out or the next day. So it, there's a lot to, logistically, there's a lot to deal with here. And again, I will give the governor all the credit in the world, and I'm not going to criticize him for moving the most vulnerable populations up. He just needs to make sure when he talks that he says, these vaccines soon will be available for 80 and over, or something like that. But just to waylay confusion, because there are a lot of people who want the vaccine and want to have some assurances that their age and other health factors aren't going to or they want to get back out. They're tired of being trapped at home after 10 months.
John, before I take a news break,
Sure.
We're going to talk about the Ohio Valley year in review, and there are a lot of stories that I think we may have forgotten about, but because COVID has been the dominant story. So let's just take that for one quick second. I don't like to prioritize stories, but I suppose there's no choice. The number one story is COVID and all of its aftermath, right?
Oh, but undoubtedly, that's probably one. You can prioritize it a number of different ways. 1A, 1B, or you could go. You could probably find the top 10 stories all COVID related. I mean, from when you start looking at just the overall impact, the deaths, the nursing home impacts, hospitals, on down the line, the financial impacts for local businesses, the financial impacts for our local hospitals. There's so many tendrils that pop off that. But yeah, there's no doubt that COVID dominated pretty much from, toward the end of February through today. That is the main thing. I would say outside of one small stretch in beginning of June when things really started to open back up and COVID the case numbers were really down across the state and across the country for the most part. But, until everything started to shut down again, when those numbers started to spike as people really got back out in force, that was probably the only time of the year that COVID wasn't the dominant story. It was still a big story. It was still one of the top 3 or 4 stories every day, but it wasn't always the big story because, a lot of people, and myself included, I kind of felt like we had, maybe we had moved past the worst of it. Even though we were being warned that the worst was yet to come, which is, what we still continue to see now.
But we're in the worst of it now. I mean, we're right now we're worse than we were in the beginning.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Deaths, and we're seeing right now, last 3 or 4 days, multiple deaths every day in Ohio County. So no, it is still it's at its peak right now for certain, or at least we have to hope it's at its peak right now because that peak has continued to push up over the last 6-7 weeks. Every day, both locally and nationwide. But yeah, COVID, you can't, there's not an argument to be made that COVID wasn't the dominant story, the dominant theme in everyone's life in 2020.
Let me do a news break, and then when we come back, let's talk about the non-COVID stories, though, just to kind of remind us all of some of the things that did happen in the Ohio Valley this past year. And there were some fairly big stories that just kind of get consumed by the COVID story. So we'll do that coming up in a minute. John McCabe is with me. It is 9:33, 27 till the hour. Quick check of headlines for you, and then we'll continue taking a look at the Ohio Valley Newsweek in review.
The Metro News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Pittsburgh plus 350 on the money line. Cleveland minus 450 with an over-under of 42. Other games in the league, Baltimore a 12-point favorite over Cincinnati. The Ravens minus 800. Bengals plus 550, over under 44.5. Indianapolis a 14-point home favorite against Jacksonville minus 1100. The Jags plus 700, over under 49.5. With your VSiN action update, I'm Tony Desiri on the Watchdog.
Oh, there's something so real about living local, and I know without a doubt I'm not alone. And I love living local. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Said I'm loving living local. WTRF is working for me. The Ohio Valley is where I love to be.
Highland Sports Complex is the coolest destination for sports and entertainment the Ohio Valley has ever seen. Pop in for some open basketball in our field house or reserve some turf time for your next practice or game on our synthetic fields. Online registration is open for development classes and leagues for youth and adults. Highland Sports is also the hottest destination for birthday parties and other events. So come challenge yourself on our play climb and enjoy your favorite virtual reality game in the arcade. No memberships required, so visit highlandsports.com to find your next entertainment experience and get ready to reach new heights.
The Original Undo's in Benwood is the perfect place to enjoy the big game, great food, and the company around you. The outdoor patio is the best-kept secret in Marshall County, featuring plenty of big-screen HD TVs, an outdoor beer garden, and NFL and MLB packages so you don't miss a second of the action. With the holiday season fast approaching, don't forget about Undo's Catering. Perfect for holiday parties, family gatherings, conferences, weddings, or any event large or small. Check out undos.com for menus, specials, entertainment, and more. Undo's Family Restaurants, family-owned since 1953.
Are you or your loved ones facing a serious legal battle? The law office of Paul Harris wants you to know you aren't alone. Do you need someone that's not afraid to go to trial and fight for your rights? Attorney Paul Harris and his team are willing to go where most firms are not. The courtroom. With a successful track record in civil litigation, criminal defense, including tax issues and healthcare fraud, Harris Law Office will fight for their clients by offering the most aggressive representation in and out of court. Call Paul Harris at Harris Law Office for a free consultation. 304-232-5300.
Life is filled with uncertainty. Jobs, sporting events, and even schooling for your children could go in any direction. With so much uncertainty surrounding you every day, there is one dealership that you can be certain about. Doan Ford has helped fight uncertainty by always helping you find great deals and acquire the best service afterwards. Visit today on exit 208 off I-70, Morristown, Ohio, or online at doanford.com. Be certain. Choose Doan Ford.
Oh, there's something so real about living local, and I know without a doubt I'm not alone. And I love living local. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Said I'm loving living local. WTRF is working for me. The Ohio Valley is where I love to be.
The Watchdog would like to thank the community for your continued support of our station, and we look forward to having you as a part of our ever-growing radio family for years to come. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Here's a look at the Ohio Valley local news week in review with newspaper editor John McCabe and Howard Monroe.
Of course, we are actually looking at the year in review here this morning on the Watchdog Morning Show. Off the text line, Howard, surely the election has to be the top 10 somewhere, even with COVID. First of all, John and I are talking primarily about the upper Ohio Valley. Certainly the election, national election, was critical. It was the number 2 story of the year, I would say, behind COVID. And they're intertwined together anyways. The election and COVID had a lot to do with each other. Hoppy and I were talking about statewide issues yesterday, and I think that the statewide election in West Virginia was a separate and big story outside of COVID. To me, it was probably the biggest story in West Virginia other than COVID. But just to our texter, John and I are talking primarily about stories here in the Upper Ohio Valley.
Well, Howard,
John, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can't forget Rosemary Ketchum's election. And that is to me, that's one of the big stories of the year. Her election to Wheeling City Council, the national attention that drew to Wheeling, Wheeling again being a kind of a first to the table in West Virginia, and frankly, in a lot of ways in the nation with that election. And so, no, I think that's a big story for Wheeling. More so than just the general city election.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rosemary's election in Ward 3 is one of the big stories of the year. Maybe not number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at the amount of national attention she got. I guess because I'm just familiar with Rosemary and knew her story and so on, and it didn't seem unusual to me. But I guess as I take a bigger picture look, it is unusual, and it did deserve
it got
attention.
Overshadowed, obviously, by what happened in November. I mean, if this was a June election, a municipal election, and, by the time November rolled around, we were all beat to death with presidential politics. So you kind of, it seems like it's been, quite frankly, when we sat down and started talking about our top 10, it seemed like it had been longer than, 5 months since that happened. But in reality, this happened, June 9th, I believe it was. So no, that's a big story. A big story for Wheeling, big story for our region.
Around this time last year, as you and I started talking about stories we thought would be big in the year ahead, John, I think we both agreed. We thought one of the single biggest stories of 2020 was going to be all the traffic caused by the I-70 construction work.
We did? Oh, that was a big swing and miss, wasn't it? I will say, but it's primarily been on the interstate, and I think probably the most difficult time from a traveler standpoint, and by difficult, maybe it took you an extra 30 minutes to get through Ohio County, was when they were working both at the state line and on 70, in Wheeling, and then sometimes after the split with 470. But in reality, Swank has moved quicker than anyone imagined they could, and I think maybe even including Swank. They've got most of the big work done. The replacement of the bridge. There is, I believe, starting next week, if I remember correctly, the ramp from Route 2 onto I-70 closes to be replaced. So that's going to, again, if you work at Wheeling Hospital, you have to find a different route to get there if that's the way you go. But again, it's been a rather minor inconvenience as opposed to what it could have been.
The story is still a huge story because of the amount of money being spent and the work being done and the complete overhaul of all those bridges, which will be a very positive thing. But I think we all had predicted that the story would be the traffic. And as you point out, other than a couple of occasions, and this is even before the pandemic, once the pandemic started, traffic was a little less anyway. The traffic really didn't become a problem. It took us all maybe a week or two to get used to the rerouting of it. And then, you learn that the Monticello exit's going to be backed up around 3 o'clock for about an hour. You got to kind of adjust for that. And but it just didn't turn out to be what we thought it was going to be, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and
I guess.
You made a good point. I mean, a story, it's not really COVID related, but COVID did play a factor because there were, from probably March through the end of May, if you recall, if you'd go out on the interstate, there were times in the middle of the day where there'd be nobody on the interstate. I mean, you would see a handful of cars because that's when, the first shutdowns really happened. And I can recall a couple times driving, to Little Washington and, seeing at most 24 cars the entire way. So when most of the big work was happening, there was just a general slowdown in traffic, all around. So no, but it's been, and again, I think the biggest takeaway from that, it's been managed very well. The contractor, I think what irritates people is when they go through miles and miles of barrels and nobody's working, and you just sit there and you wonder why. Here, every day when you drive on 70, they're working somewhere. Swank has got crews out. They're working. They're getting things done quickly. So while it might be an inconvenience, at least people are seeing, tangible results of workers, walking across the beams on the Fort Henry Bridge or whatever it might be. And again, that project has just been a minor inconvenience.
And I think Swank learned a lot from the, and we all did, from the what we called at the time the pre-construction construction in the fall of last year. Before the actual work got started, they were doing the crossovers and a lot of work there, and that did get to be a real serious traffic problem.
Right.
But I think they learned from that. They began to add more signage and so on after that fact, and I think probably that was a good learning experience. But that certainly was one of the big stories of the year. John, another big story that continues, although maybe we've now finally seen the end to it, was the story of Bishop Bransfield. It still lingered on into 2020 with Bransfield declining at first to offer his apology, then that weird apology, put in air quotes, apology letter, finally accepting the punishment, if that's the right word. That's not the right word, but the word that the Bishop Brennan used for Bransfield. But that story continued actually over several fronts in 2020.
Sure, yeah. We had, obviously, as you said at the beginning of the year, continued refusal to offer the apology. I think it came midsummer. His apology, 4-paragraph apology, finally came, in which he, the former bishop, essentially blamed everyone else for being too sensitive. And if he hurt their feelings, well, it was never his intention, but I didn't do it intentionally. One of those, fine, you need an apology, here's a...
Non-apology apology, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the couple of my takeaways from that I think have been interesting to watch over the last several months. Bishop Mark Brennan, who was the immediate successor to Michael Bransfield, and he wrote a letter to the editor telling me that I was wrong, in essence, or in my opinion on this, or my view on this. But, his first year was consumed by Michael Bransfield. Whether he truly wants to admit it or not, everything he did was tinged in some way by the deeds that Michael Bransfield had previously done. Now he's kind of freed from that burden, and he's been able to get out and, in my mind, really make his mark as the bishop of the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston and kind of re-engage with the church in a way that can allow it to rebuild and recover. As we covered, and I'm sure you had people call into your show, people are never going to forget, and many refuse to forgive right now the church for allowing this to happen. But, Mark Brennan, in the time he has left as bishop, and then the bishop after him, have the opportunity now at least to put Michael Bransfield fully in the rearview mirror, where you can still see him and you remember the lessons of what happened, but now can start to rebuild the faithful, start to rebuild the faith of those who follow the Catholic Church. And so to me, that's one of the big takeaways from all this, is that it's now done. The penance that Rome required of him has been paid, whether we like it or not. So now you've got to figure out how to move on. And I think Bishop Brennan has been doing that, but now he is finally, I'm going to say, unshackled from Michael Bransfield, but essentially is and is able to make his own mark as the bishop.
Related to that, and sort of a corollary to the Bransfield story, is how the Bransfield story played out at Wheeling Hospital, and the changes that have now occurred at Wheeling Hospital. First of all, there was still that lawsuit sitting over their heads for some time, which had come about because of the way Bransfield and Ron Violi had managed the hospital. But they got that behind them and have begun to move forward now with a new arrangement with WVU Medicine.
Yeah. I had a chance to sit down with Bishop Brennan and Albert Wright and Doug Harrison several months back, where they laid this out for us. And really what their vision is, the reasons why. Obviously, Wheeling Hospital had been under a federal whistleblower lawsuit for almost 2 years and ended up with a $50 million penalty that the hospital, not the diocese, but the hospital has, had to pay back on its own. So, the realities that we're seeing across the country is a standalone hospital like Wheeling Hospital, particularly when it's hit with some of these big debts or big liabilities such as that lawsuit can't make it on their own. So the diocese and WVU Medicine have agreed to a long-term lease deal where essentially Wheeling Hospital will become WVU Medicine Wheeling Hospital, will retain its Catholic identity through I think it's a Catholic Identity Agreement is what it's called, if I remember correctly, and WVU will lease the property and run the hospital as its own, but the property, the buildings will remain in the possession of the Diocese of Wheeling Charleston. So it's an interesting arrangement. But Mark Brennan, I still remember maybe his third day when I had a chance to sit down with him. At that time, he wasn't even aware that the diocese owned a major hospital, and are not fully aware of what that meant. And he and his comments then and his comments now are basically the diocese is not in the Catholic Church has been in the business of medicine for thousands of years, but the challenges of running a modern day hospital are a little more than just providing care with everything else. So everyone agreed, and this transaction, I believe, last I heard, is set to commence at the end of the first quarter, and maybe even go into effect April 1 if everything is falls into place as it should. So that'll again dawn maybe the next chapter of Wheeling Hospital, and further cement WVU Medicine's growth in this region.
Doug Harrison and WVU Medicine, as controlling Wheeling Hospital, got kind of a double whammy, though. They had the leftover Bransfield problems, the lawsuit and others, and then they had their own financial problems, and they were hit with COVID. I mean, even to this day, the hospital was bulging at the seams with COVID patients right now. So it was a difficult year all the way around for Wheeling Hospital.
Yes. What did they have? I think a $30 million loss year over year, and with most of that being attributed directly to COVID and the fact that, from, March through June, May and June, they couldn't do, the CDC guidance was don't do any elective surgeries, keep the hospitals ready for a surge in patients. And so that led to, what did they want, 100 plus voluntary buyouts, I believe, is what they initially were seeking, before they had to go a different route. But that led them to make some staffing decisions that, obviously they needed to make for the long-term success of that hospital.
The healthcare industry in general in the Ohio Valley took a little different picture during this year. Trinity Systems has begun to make more inroads here into the lower part of the upper Ohio Valley. Reynolds Hospital is now a WVU Medicine facility. They were before, and playing a much bigger role. And, of course, the old Ohio Valley Medical Center, which has been shut down, gets maybe a new lease on life, or at least a new owner, as the city of Wheeling buys the OVMC property.
Yeah, that was what was that, I can't remember the cost on that transaction now, Howard, but it was, I think, about $500,000 up front, and then the city had some back taxes to pay. But Electo had been holding that property and had it for sale, and the city was able to strike a deal with Electo, or not necessarily Electo. What was it? Medical Properties Trust was the name of the company that out of Alabama that held that. And the city was in. That was a really contentious, short period of time there, where the city had to make this, do its due diligence and make this decision, because as anyone who's ever been in that building, who's ever been in the buildings there, understands. Excuse me, Howard. Throat's getting dry here. The newer buildings, the West Building, pretty good shape. the older buildings, not very good shape. The physical plant that handles the water and heating and cooling, bad shape. A lot of problems that the city inherited there. And it was really one of those, darned if you do, darned if you don't. If it sits there and continues to deteriorate, at some point the city's probably going to have to step in anyway. At least this way, they were able to buy those properties. They've got a plan that's already moving to take, across the street, Chaplain Street. They're going to have, they've taken the Valley Professional Center building. They're going to, repurpose that for the public safety building, or at least for the new police department. So they've got some tangible use out of there. I think their figure, by doing that instead of the 19th Street building, which they ended up buying anyway, they will, save them several $1 million. So, a lot of things make sense. Better location for emergency response there than 19th Street was. But, now really it comes down as we, again, a story that not directly related to COVID, but in many ways is, some of the things that I know were in the back of people's minds when they bought that is, PTT, maybe they need a corporate headquarters. Maybe a company that comes in needs a corporate headquarters. Well, that project's kind of on life support right now. Due to COVID, due to the election, due to other things. People are, more and more people are working remotely now. So is there going to be a big need for big office spaces for companies any longer? Again, the city didn't have much of a choice in this matter, but the reality is I could see 10, 15 years down the road that the city still owns that and it continues to deteriorate in some ways. Now they have repurposed.
The city will have to find some way to, if they can't unload it, that's a bad phrase to say. If they can't sell it to some other entity, they're going to have to find some additional use for the building. John, we're almost out of time. Leaving before I leave healthcare and I leave the whole segment. Also, East Ohio Regional Hospital, which closed at the same time OVMC did, appears to be getting a new lease on life with a new owner. It's not open yet, I don't think, but they're claiming to be getting ready to open a new facility in that old building as well.
Yeah, Dr. John Johnson from up in Columbus, he's bought a couple hospitals such as this. He is the kind of the initial driving force behind it. They've already hired maybe a CFO or CEO, one of the two, Fred Albertini, I think it is.
Yeah, Albertini.
They've had a couple virtual job fairs. So all indications are that hospital, the reopening of that hospital in some fashion is moving along.
John, I got to let you go. We're out of time. Have a good New Year's, sitting at home trying to stay awake till midnight. And next time you and I talk, it'll be in 2021. Hopefully it'll be better.
Well, let's hope it's 2021 and we don't roll over to the 13th month of 2020, Howard.
Okay, that's true. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
See ya.
Listen, you all have yourself a happy New Year's Eve and a good New Year. I'll be back with you on Monday. Biff, you have a great holiday weekend, and I'll be back Monday at 7 o'clock. Are you back with me, pal?
You too, and I'll be back Monday ready for another year.
We're going to keep on doing it till we get it right.
That could be a long time.
Indeed. ABC News is already in progress.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Of the new variant was discovered
All right, Biffy. Another year in the history books. I have no idea what's happening next week. I'll try and put something together before Monday. We'll make something happen. Have a good holiday. Don't drink too much. Don't eat too much. All right. I know I'm going to eat a lot. We've got langostinos and we've got shrimp for tonight. And normally we have other people to share it with, but it'll just be me, so I'll be eating a lot. No, there won't be any leftovers. I'll just eat them all. All right, maybe I'll save some for tomorrow. All right, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you Monday. Thanks a lot. All right, bye.
The Labor Department this morning saying 787,000 new unemployment claims were filed last week, down a bit from the week before, still higher than anything seen pre-pandemic. Samuel Little, considered to be the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, has died. The 80-year-old Little admitted killing 93 people. He was serving multiple life sentences. 2021 just arrived in Tokyo. You're listening to ABC News.
Mary's Bistro delivery business is bustling and ready to burst.
Orders 34, 35, and 36 are up. Who's handling these? Hello, Mary's Bistro, now delivering.